I'm Lucy.
And I'm Jennifer.
You're listening to Everything I Know About.
Each week, we share everything we know about a new topic, equipped with some internet research and a little too much exposure to pop culture. In today's episode, we're talking girl boss culture, the rise, the fall, and those of us left in its wake feeling burnt out and lost.
So the word girl boss was coined in 2014 by Sophia Amoruso, creator and CEO of Nasty Gal, who published an autobiography titled #Girlboss. Her definition is a 21st century working woman whose success is defined in opposition to the masculine business world in which she swims upstream.
Okay, that's a huge mouthful. And I feel like that doesn't really capture the girl boss that lives in my head. In my head, she's like this hot career woman. She has it all. She's figured it all out. And she just exudes success and is that like career queen that leans in.
Totally. And even that term, lean in, of course, brings to mind for us millennials the book of our coming of age, the book Lean In by Sheryl Sandberg, which I read my junior year of college. And for those who aren't familiar, who could use a refresher, Sheryl Sandberg, who was then the COO of Facebook, wrote Lean In as a how-to guide for women to navigate systemic bias in the corporate world and rise in the ranks. Her perspective was that the more women in power, the better for all women. And she preached a feminism that I think for many felt really unreachable. Her examples were things like how she achieved success by using the word we instead of the word I in salary negotiations, and how sometimes she had to bring her child to her fancy corner office and have him play there while she worked, or even at home with all the help of nannies and whatnot. She would gently guide her husband into taking on half of the household duties. So obviously, like from today's perspective, many folks now realize it was quite a limited view of feminism. But definitely when I read the book, I was bought into this idea. And I'm curious, Jennifer, was that your experience when you read it?
Oh, yeah. I was totally bought into it too. I mean, it was the first time really that I had heard anyone give an antidote to the systemic pressures on women. And all I had ever heard my whole life was that it was going to be hard to rise the ranks. And no one was telling me how to actually overcome that. And this was the first time that someone had written sort of this manifesto that was like, yeah, this is the situation that we're in, but it's not your destiny. You can rise above. And let me show you how.
Yeah. And providing actionable advice that I would say I, in my naivete, thought 100% applied to me.
Of course, I'll have the corner office where my kid can play for sure.
Absolutely. And I think at the time, there was also all of these examples of success, right? Like the early 2010s was when The Wing was founded. The Wing was this female-only co-working space that started in New York, but then spread all across the US, and they raised a lot of venture funding. It was the rise of Glossier, and I was a huge fan of Glossier. I bought like all their products.
Same.
And I think there was all of these examples of these young women who were achieving unprecedented levels of success. I remember when Audrey Gelman, the co-founder of The Wing, was on Ink, and she was like visibly pregnant. And that was an earth-shattering image to be put out there, that you could, quote unquote, have it all, be an amazing mom, but also have a really incredible career where you were not reporting into the CEO, but you were the CEO. And I'm curious, Jennifer, I know you worked at Ellevest, which is another one of these companies that rose up during that same time period and was founded by a woman. What was it like actually working there at that time?
Yeah, Ellevest is definitely one of those Glossier the Wing type companies, and it's an incredible company. I recommend everyone check it out. They pretty much are a betterment for women, so it's all female investing. And their thesis is the more money women have, the better the world is. So very much in this like Sheryl Sandberg type vein. And they were founded in 2016, and I joined in 2018. And so it was the height of this girl boss culture. I remember I sat down at my desk the first day and I had this notebook that was literally embossed with Girl Boss on the title. And I had this tote that said, "It feels so good to be a go-getter," or something like that. And I found it very empowering, honestly. Like I felt like I was in this room of other female engineers, which is almost impossible to find in the workplace, even now. And they all wanted me to succeed. And I just felt so supported. And it was honestly like a great culture, but it also gave me this ambition that I wanted to shatter this glass ceiling of female engineers because I was in this environment that would allow me to do so. And to not seize that opportunity would almost be a betrayal to my fellow women who I wanted to bring up behind me as well.
Yeah. It's fascinating because 2018 was not actually that long ago. And now I'm sitting here listening to say that and being like, oh my God, I can't imagine a company doing that today. I feel like girl boss has really fallen out of favor as a term. And I'm so curious, like, why that is. I feel like we've seen the younger generation push back on that a lot. I feel like COVID in 2020 was definitely a turning point where many people realized that their employers are not really on their side and they're not actually loyal to them. And obviously, there was layoffs then. Most recently, there's been another round of layoffs in the tech world where I think more young people are realizing that they give so much to their jobs, and yet in times of hardship, their jobs are not giving back to them and they aren't supporting them. And I think even when it seems like jobs are giving us benefits that are supposed to support us, I think more and more there's companies who are offering fertility treatments or adoption support or trying to give equal parental leave as a part of their packages. It's really more for them than us. They're doing it to be able to attract the talent and less because they want to support women as full humans, full individuals.
I totally agree. And it's hard because when these companies do try to give women a leg up, so to speak, it almost seems backhanded. I remember I was at a women's recruiting event for Goldman Sachs and I was 20 at the time. And these female executives were telling us how wonderful a place Goldman is for women. And they've made so many strides in the past decade or so. And their specific examples were being able to deliver breast milk from the office to home. Like Goldman will pay for that. And they'll pay for IVF and they'll pay for egg freezing. And in my 20-year-old brain, I was like, so you're telling me they're willing to pay for my body to be more like a male body, that I can be at the office just as much as a man now, despite me wanting to have a child or not. That's not a real accommodation. That's just me being able to produce more for you. And yeah, those things are like very convenient if you want to be at the office all the time. But I think the better solution here is to say, how can we have fathers participate more, have men participate more in the same way that a woman has to, and make that playing field more equal rather than women having to be more like men to succeed, which is very much the lean in message. I feel like now we see it as like leaning into the patriarchy. How can you act more like a man to succeed in the workplace rather than saying, how can the workplace adjust itself to be a place that women can be successful on their own as a woman?
Yeah, absolutely. It's fascinating because I don't know if you read Michelle Obama's memoir, but I feel like she's, and her books have been maybe this generation's version of like a feminist manifesto. We're all familiar with her, obviously, because she was the first lady. But in her book, she really talks about the rise and when it was just her and Barack and their young children. And she was really open about really resenting him for the fact that he could go and work out at the gym for 30 minutes and she couldn't, and how he was already working so much and traveling so much as a senator and still felt like he could take that time to go work out. And of course, she wanted to take care of herself and work out, but she just felt like she couldn't. And I think a lot of women struggle with that, even ourselves holding ourselves back, right? Being like, okay, but can I, should I leave my child? Whereas maybe it feels easier for a man to just do that.
Yeah, I do think naturally women are going to hold themselves back when it comes to parenting because the bond biologically is just so much stronger. And especially in those early days when you're breastfeeding, the bond with mother and child is so much stronger than it will ever be with father and child. And that's okay. But the question is, how do we, on a systemic level, make the playing field more equal? And it was really interesting in Sweden and the Nordic countries, they actually do this very well. They require men to take paternity leave the same amount that the woman does. So maternity and paternity leave are equal amounts and they're mandatory. So I think the couple gets a year and each parent gets 6 months, which is amazing. That is such an easy, like natural way to make the playing field more equal.
And the fact that it's mandatory is so fascinating because I think it is also a perception thing that, like, oh, maybe even if my company offers it in the US, sometimes guys are afraid to take it because they're not the ones who went through a quote unquote physical change where they need to recover, which I think is how maternity leave is treated in the US as your body went through a change. Now you need to recover. And other forms of families, whether that's adopting or whatnot, are not treated the same, even though the process of bringing a young child, a baby into your family is probably traumatic and crazy, no matter whether you birthed that child or not. I don't know. Thank God I'm not a mom yet. I'm certainly not ready. But yeah, I think the reality is that still today, there's a ton of discrimination in the workforce. Women feeling like they can't tell their employers they are getting pregnant, or if they're in the interview process, feeling like they have to hide that.
Yeah, for sure. And Lucy, you are married. And so when you have gone to interviews, have you ever felt like this is a subject that they try to breach with you? We know it's like very illegal to ask if someone's about to be a mother, if they're planning on getting pregnant, but have you ever felt like that was something that employers are trying to get out of you?
So I have not had that experience myself, but I do think that being married, and especially when the person interviewing you is married, is like a privileged position because then they're like, oh, you're stable. Oh, you're just like me. You're married. You're older. You're stable. Whereas I think when I was single and I was interviewing, sometimes it'd be like, oh, like how committed is this person really? And then I have a close friend who actually found out one day that she was getting paid less than a male colleague. And she went to the CEO and asked, hey, like, why is this happening? This doesn't seem fair. I'm doing as much, if not more, work, and I've got actually more responsibility. Like, I have more direct reports than this person. Why is this person making more than me? And the CEO said, oh, is married and he has kids. And so we
Oh
just
my
thought
gosh.
he needed more money to support his family. And you're not really, you're just you.
That is
And
unbelievable.
yeah, so this is real. And that was a couple years ago. So this is definitely still happening. And for her, she rightly was outraged by that and ended up quitting that company. So I think these kind of like hidden biases are happening all the time, even if there's like equal protection under the law, right? And like you're not supposed to discriminate based on gender or marital position or family situation or whatever. The people who are setting the rules and the people who are setting the pay bands are human, and whether they know it or not, sometimes they do things like this that are clearly unjust. And we can see it from an outsider's perspective, but it just becomes the norm within companies. Like your company does not care about you. They aren't looking out for you. Figure out what you want. Only until recently, I think, again, with changes that we've experienced due to the pandemic and the rise of remote work and quiet quitting and all of these examples of Gen Z women who are just clocking in for their 9 and clocking out at 5 and not really caring what they do. And they are recognizing that their lives are so much more than what they do for work.
Yeah, this change is not only so drastic, but so fascinating to me because it signals this shift that it's not even just I'm not going to work like 1,000,000% and give myself to a company anymore. It's almost seemed like those people are suckers. Like they don't understand that there's just some guy at the top that's a parasite on their time. And what are you actually getting out of it? You're still living in the matrix or something.
I think it's like significantly different than the culture that you and I grew up with when we were in our early 20s, where if I would have told my friends, like, oh, I don't care about my career, I just want to relax at home with my dog, I would have gotten really concerned stares and felt like I was a pariah. It hasn't felt okay to not be a hustler and not to want to work really hard. I think the flip of that in the American context is that you're lazy. And only recently has it, I think, been embraced that no, we are all so much more than what we do for work and what we achieve when it comes to goals at work. And we are full individuals, and your passion doesn't have to be what you do. You can have a passion outside of work, and you can give more of your energy to that passion than you do to your 9 to 5.
We really see this with the phrase, I've girl boss too close to the sun, which to me is like all of these women who just did these careers that they like hate just for the outside validation because you needed to seem like that ambitious career woman, not only for your friends, but for yourself. And you're looking around and you're like, actually, did I even want all of this at the end of the day? Am I happy with all of this? And oftentimes I think we're realizing the answer is no, we don't want
Yeah,
it.
like what you said brings to mind this tweet I saw that went viral. It was by Daisy Alioto, and she wrote, the girl boss is dead. Long live the girl moss, lying on the floor of the forest and being absorbed back into nature,
I
which
love that.
brings to mind this lovely imagery. And I think the reality is it's not one or the other, right? It's not like you have to be like a hyper ambitious career queen, but it's also not like we can just be like, oh, we just want to do nothing and just chill all the time and drink lattes and hang out with our friends, right? I'm learning that what being a girl moss means is not literally laying and doing nothing, but rather the art and the time of reflection. It's taking the time now that I'm turning 30 to reflect on this last decade and ask myself that question that you brought up, right? Why did I try so hard to achieve all of these goals I had with my career and work? Was it just for the external validation? Or was it because I genuinely wanted those things? And if I genuinely wanted those things, then I don't think there's any issue with that for sure. Keep chasing. But I think what I'm learning about myself and maybe other women are too is wow, there were a lot of women who maybe didn't want those things for themselves, but then felt like they had to fit that mold because that was what was being celebrated in our early 20s. And now that finally it's not. And it is much more of this mindset of you got to just figure it out for yourself because no one else is looking out for you. Like your company does not care about you, they aren't looking out for you. Figure out what you want has been the opening of a door for me to be like, yeah, actually, can I put aside the external validation and just really figure it out, even if it's uncomfortable, which I would say I quit my job 2 months ago now. It certainly has been uncomfortable at times when people meet me at a party for the first time. It's like, oh, what do you do? And I'm like, nothing right now. I'm unemployed. And it's funny because sometimes people say congratulations when I say that. And I always
I've
find that
had
to
that
be,
too.
I
Yeah,
find
it's
that to
so
be like,
funny.
yeah, very validating. I think it is brave to take the time to focus on yourself and figure out what you want. But yeah, what's your experience been? Because you quit 3 months ago, right?
Yeah, but I've had the exact same highs and lows. Like sometimes I do get the congratulations and it feels really good because I'm like, yeah, it was brave to quit. This was a huge leap and I'm taking a huge bet on myself. And it's scary and it is cool. If somebody else would have told me that when I was working, I would have been like, good for you. So that does feel good. But I have the same insecurities. Like when I meet people who have these impressive careers in finance or they work in VC or private equity and they're like, what do you do? And I have to say, nothing right now. I quit my job a few months ago. It feels like I want to let them know, like, I'm still ambitious. I still have things I want to do. I'm still a successful person. And I almost have to temper myself from word vomiting all of my successes to just be on their same level, which obviously indicates some sort of insecurity there, right? And I think it's deeply rooted in this idea that I have given up so much, like for my education, I've sacrificed so much of my youth and when you willingly give all that up to say, okay, maybe I went down the wrong path. Like maybe I need to sit and reflect and think about what I actually want. So that success that I ultimately get feels really good. It feels like a huge step back, but I think I know I've taken the bet that in 10 years, it's going to be a much more validating form of success than the success that I previously had.
I'm curious, given that we both took one path in our 20s, which was following the mantra of the girl boss and trying to achieve everything we could, what your reflections are about that period and how that is influencing your reflections now that you look towards your 30s.
I think that girl boss period of my 20s was great for allowing me to see beyond the narrative that I was given as a teenager and as a woman in my early 20s that like life was just going to be hard. And I don't see it that way now. I see it like I need to choose a good partner, which I did. I need to know what I want in life, which I'm figuring out. And I can be a mother. I can quote unquote have it all if you have the right ingredients, meaning like a good partner, financial stability, which we're all working on. And I don't want to say admire because of all of the downfall stuff that we had talked about. I don't admire the girl boss necessarily, but I do think it served its place in giving us more actionable advice for how to navigate the world. Now, I think this girl boss era that you were just talking about is so necessary. I think it's so necessary for all of us to take a step back and say, like, what internally do we want outside of this idea that we need to be the most successful people to be an example for other women or an example for the younger generation? Like, it's enough to be exactly who you want to be at this moment and not be so worried about what everyone else is going to think of you and what you're doing for the gender as a whole. That's just entirely too much pressure. And yeah, no wonder we're all feeling burnt out.
I really relate to that. I feel like in my 20s, I had a lot of goals. I had like this bucket list of things I wanted to do before I turned 30. And some of those things included starting a company or living abroad. And I did those things and then realized at 28, when I finished my list, that I was still very lost. And just as, if not more lost than I was when I just graduated college, here I was thinking I would do all these things and get to know myself so much better. But the reality is, when I was doing those things, I was completely 100% absorbed by those things. And I wasn't taking the time to stop and question if I was doing the right thing. I was just moving down a checklist. And I feel like I didn't have to pause because I just knew when this thing ends, I've got this other thing I want to do and I'm just going to go chase that. And when I finished my list, I didn't have a next step. And I think the last 2 years I've been working and I've been like doing kind of similar things to what I've been doing in the past, but they felt a lot less fulfilling because it didn't feel like I had this greater purpose. I was done with my list and I didn't yet have a new list or knew what I wanted to do longer term. And I think now turning 30 this year has really pushed me to think critically about what do I want this next decade to look like if I was turning 40, looking back, and if I had done what I had done with the last couple years of my time, would I feel satisfied? And I certainly have no regrets about my 20s. I think your 20s are to learn about yourself, to explore, to try a bunch of things. And I'm really happy I did those things, but I think I need to do a lot more in my 30s now to really be at peace and feel fulfilled when I'm 40.
And thank God you're doing this now, like having those reflections now at 29.
Yeah, totally. And it's funny because I have sought advice from some women who are a couple years older than me and thinking, oh, they made it past 30, so they must have gone through this and figured it out. And now they're on the other side. And I think in talking to them, what I've learned is I guess you never really figure it out because, yes, they did get through 30 and maybe they got through some struggle in their life or career that was plaguing them and they needed to figure it out. But now there's a new thing, right? Maybe it was the decision to have children and then they had children and now their children are entering school age and they don't know where to live or how to give their child the best education. And if that means leaving New York City, a place they love, to go to the suburbs, a place they would never live. I don't know. It just seems like there's an endless amount of decisions out there, each one that might cause a lot of reflection around what does this say about me and like who am I and like what decision is the right decision and feeling pressure because of course as we get older every decision we make does close other doors. And I think for me it was a bit of a relief when I realized my initial objective even a couple weeks ago, which was okay, I got to figure out everything I'm going to do in my 30s or if not do at least everything I want to learn and experience and be for myself. I think I've now more like, okay, I just got to figure it out for maybe this next couple of years. And then I'm going to have another crisis and I just need to accept that will come. And I'm sure I'll have another crisis nearer to midlife. And life is, there's never a point where you are just done and you've just figured it all out and you can just relax. I think all of us are just taking it 1 week, 1 month, 1 year at a time.
Definitely. I know that's what I'm trying to get myself to be more in that mindset now in the unemployed life, really focusing on the journey, not the destination. But it's very difficult. I feel like it's hard for me to focus my energy into rest because it feels paradoxical because I just want to rest so that I can be more productive and that I can push myself towards some goal that I haven't even yet defined because I haven't rested enough to know what I even want for real. So it's this endless cycle of rest, putting your energy towards something that you want, but not knowing what it is. And it feels like this spiral has not quite ended yet. Do you feel now that you've had enough rest, or how are you viewing rest in this time? Do you feel like you need the rest to reflect?
I think it's been a journey, even, yeah, to come to terms with rest. I know that I cannot be running at full speed all the time. I will burn myself out. And since I'm on a journey and journeys should take time, I think that mindset has helped me feel less pressure around I need to have reached this milestone 2 months in or this other milestone 4 months in. I think for me, the most important goal is just to feel like I know what is going to bring me fulfillment and to be on the path to achieving that. And I know that every single day I want to make progress towards that goal, but I also need to take the time to take care of myself and go to the gym and eat healthy because I do think as someone who's been really trained to want and need external validation, if I don't take care of myself and rest on a day-to-day basis, then my mental health will just decline. I think in my 20s, I just worked a lot and I would feel, of course, I can always go more. And my husband would come home and he'd be like, did you drink any water today? Did you eat lunch? And I'd be like, no, I really needed to get this thing done. And I wasn't going to feel at peace until I finished it. So I decided I would just power through. And of course, I could do it. Like I was able to do it, but I really wasn't taking care of myself. And I really want this time in my life now to feel different and to build good habits that I can always come back to, rely on. Even if in the future I am working another like intense, high powered job where I need to work a lot, I will have developed the habits to have clear boundaries around feeding myself, taking care of myself.
Yeah. These are definitely things that we need to make the girl bossing sustainable. You need the girl boss. What is in between girl boss, girl boss? We need a middle ground here.
Yeah.
Girl growth. I don't know. We need to figure out something that's not going full speed ahead and not
Yeah.
sinking into the earth. That's what I want to find.
Yeah. It's like this journey of feeling the tension of both of these things, right? Feeling the tension of being two still very ambitious women, but also being unemployed right now. And so many of my peers are going through this. Many folks I've talked to are struggling with the same questions. And I think we should all just recognize that, okay, we are the way we are because we were influenced to be this way, like to want these things. And now it is a reckoning to really try to block out all that influence and figure out what we truly want for ourselves.
I think that's a great way to put it, is blocking out the influence and being self-reflective in a way that's not due to Instagram, not due to anyone else telling us what we want or need, looking inwards.
If you enjoy the pod, we would love for you to give us a follow and rate us on Apple Podcasts, which helps us get the word out and reach new listeners. Full transcripts and show notes are available on Patreon, where if you choose to become a patron, you'll also get access to bonus content, our monthly book club, and our eternal gratitude.
If you'd like to get in touch or suggest a topic for a future episode, email us at everythingiknowaboutpod@gmail.com or DM us across all socials at EikaPod, that's EIKA pod. Thanks for listening and see you next week.